Hello everybody. Throughout this class, as you know, I've selected 7 different articles for you to look at on your own. If any of them interest you, have any sort of just, ties to your research, I really want you to take a look at them and use them to help better your research, your practice, that sort of thing. We're going to be looking at 7 different articles. The one that I'm going to be talking about during this lecture is the Ingersoll article that looks at teacher retention and teacher shortage. So we've looked at teacher turnover and teacher shortages using Owens and Valesky in the Human Resources chapter. Now we're taking a look at it from an organizational perspective. Why I think this is important, and I think it's something that you might want to gain experience with, is the fact that it actually uses a well-established data set that looks at schools and looks at how schools are staffed, what are the types of individuals that become teachers, and that can really do something in helping you to be more effective. We're going to be looking at the Schools and Staffing Survey, which is one of the largest organizational dimensions on school staffing, and then the follow-up survey for teachers from the National Center for Educational Statistics. You know, going into a study, that if you see schools and staffing or you see NCES, you're looking at very large data sets, and it's going to be a heavily drawn statistical study. So I want to give you the findings first, so that this is this will give you an idea sort of what the point of the article is. Nothing that I have up here should surprise you whatsoever. I think every single person that's watching this can agree that none of this is going to be a shock to anybody. The biggest finding was that most people leave teaching because they retire. I don't think there's anything really to be said there. If you've invested a career and you've invested your time into an occupation, even if you don't like the organization that you're at, you can jump from district to district to district to district to district, and people will be leaving the profession due to retirement, but eventually they'll retire. People leave teaching too because of job dissatisfaction, and probably mostly because they can make money elsewhere. The difference is the people that are going to leave to make money elsewhere are going to be people that are in their early parts of their career, that are looking at ways that they can maximize their salary and maximize their earnings potential. Ingersoll's main belief is that teacher recruitment programs can't solve staffing because you have to change the organizations in order to retain teachers, and once you're able to do that, you're going to be much more successful in solving the staffing problems of schools. So why Ingersoll? Why do we talk about him? Why is he important in organizational theory? Well, honestly, he's one of the biggest names that there is. Why I think he's pertinent to this group is the fact that he comes out of this from a lens and a framework of sociology. That's great. One of the ways that I want you to really think in this course is how you can use different frameworks to better your own understanding of education and understanding of organizations as a whole. Ingersoll's awesome because he's looking at sociology of organizations. So how do these organizations interact with each other? What are the communication structures? What are the communication patterns? What is the management style and hierarchy, but not how is that hierarchy established? How is information conveyed from one level of the organization to the other? So it's a different perspective. And what I like about him is he puts the theory first, then he applies it. He looks really at ways you can change organizational improvement to reform schools, but the key takeaway in almost every single one of his articles that I've read is that organizations can improve, they do improve, they will improve, but it's the sustainability piece that kind of gets lost in the equation. So one of the things that you can do to research is you can look at large data sets. This is something that as you gain experience and you gain time with doing research, you can find that using large data sets can be an incredibly powerful tool to improve you. National Schools and Staffing is incredibly prolific. It's in so many different research articles, so many different people have used it, and there's a lot of different ways that you can interpret it for research. But I need to preface this. This is one of the reasons why, we talk about when we're looking at organizational theory, can you do it qualitatively, can you do it quantitatively, to really engage the national schools and staffing just data. You need to really work with somebody that understands statistics, because they have to take it and spin it in a way that helps you understand it and helps you better use it so that they can promote the research as well. So there are two organizations that are in this review. That this is one of the other reasons why I picked the articles. If this was a politics of ed class, I would spend time giving you the Republican spin on Troops for Teachers, and I would be giving you the Democrat spin for Teach for America. Think about your experiences with these organizations. I am not going to preach any political philosophies or views, because, quite frankly, my experience with both of these organizations is exactly the same. It's the same. It doesn't matter if it's the Republican, conservative, liberal, Democrat perspective. The bottom line is people that do Troops for Teachers and Teach for America normally have a bigger plan. They'll go into the school, they'll stay there for 2 or 3 years, they'll use it to build their experience, they'll get the organizations to pay for their degree, then they'll use it to engage in graduate school, to go get their doctorate. Some will even go into political careers. Most people do it to advance their careers, and that's been proven. And that's not a knock on either of those organizations, it's the truth. If you ask somebody, why did I do Teach for America? Why did I do Troops for Teachers? They did it for career advancement. So are they going to be good teachers? Well, they're going to be effective, because they're using it to move to the next step. The problem is, it's this long-term sustainability piece. As a leader of an organization, if you're hiring people out of either of these alternative pathways, do not expect them to stay. The sustainability piece with somebody that's in Teach for America or Troops for Teachers, it just isn't there. Being me now, going on 15 plus years in education, I can tell you on a personal level, I've worked with probably over 100 people that have been in either of these organizations. I only know of one that has stayed in the classroom who did Teach for America, and he's actually my age, but that's one person over 15 years that didn't take this, gain the experience, and use it to better themselves, and use it to move sometimes out of education, sometimes into policy work. So know that going into this, because you need to understand that they're going to train the teachers appropriately, they're going to give them experience, but the long-term effect is something that can be a challenge. So turnover. The average cost of replacing a person in an organization is 2.5 times the cost of their salary. That's basic human resources theory. Organizational theory will tell us that turnover can link to performance and effectiveness of organizations. If you have people that are constantly leaving the organization and going elsewhere, then you're losing institutional stability. You're losing people that actually have the opportunity to implement change in an organization, and that causes issues, and it creates negative conditions where people work. If you're working in a school district right now that has a revolving door of administrators and teachers, how can you be a leader in that school and make a significant change if there's going to be a new person or a new body every 6 months to a year, and you're not going to have time to watch the organization sustain? So try to think about this and understand that turnover does matter. Now, I'm not telling you only promote internally. I'm telling you there has to be a balance between the two of them, and that's equally important as well. So why do people leave teaching? Like I said, the main findings. Number one, they retire. But the current generation leaves the profession mostly because they can make more money elsewhere. I come from a state that was fully unionized. When I explained to people what my starting teaching salary was in Oklahoma, they laugh. How could they pay you that little to be a teacher? Well, I lived in Pennsylvania, and you know from looking at anything in a human resources class that I'm in the third, that I'm from the third highest paying state for teachers. Well, in our state, we have something called a jump step, which basically is a $20,000 to $30,000 raise after somebody's been there for 16 to 17 years. So when people in Oklahoma complain and say, I'm only making $42,000 as a starting teacher, well, I made 32 as a starting teacher, and I never would have made it up to the level that I'm at by staying in the classroom. And they do that in a way because the union exists to protect your senior and veteran teachers and make sure they get paid more money. Are you going to make more over the course of your career in a unionized environment? Absolutely. You're gonna, if you can stay and sustain in the organization, you would be coming up on much more money than you ever make in a non-unionized state. Reflecting on this right now as I film this, 2019 would have been my magical year. I would have got a $32,000 raise between 2018 and 2019. That basically would have just put me at my top step for the remainder of my career as long as I wanted to stay in teaching. I left the classroom in 2007. I would have had to stay for 12 more years, and I would have probably lost about $300,000 to $500,000 by staying in the classroom, and it would have taken me 10 to 15 years to gain the loss back, which is a reason why people leave the classroom. And they're going to leave the profession because they can make more money elsewhere. Then the key is getting a district to acknowledge that practical experience, buy years of service from you, and gain your raise there. So that's one of the things that my generation is thinking of doing, and it's an effective way to do teaching. So, where are there high needs areas for teachers? Well, here were the findings, and whoop-de-doo, this should not surprise anybody. We need special ed teachers. You all know we need special ed teachers, but we need math teachers and we need science teachers as well. You all know that as well. But foreign languages, there's a high need for that also. One of the struggles, in our schools and in schools and society right now is the fact that we pay teachers the same regardless of their subject area. You can make any judgments that you want on this, but if you're going to sit here and tell me that you're going to pay a first grade elementary school teacher the same that you're going to pay a high school calculus teacher or a special ed teacher that's working with life skills, I have issues with that, and I have massive problems with that. But you have to somehow balance this. When you're looking at the way that organizations pay employees, is that fair? Should they get more money based on subject area? Some would say yes, some would say no. How about a high school band teacher that has 150 students in a class? Should they be paid more? Well, I certainly think so. I think the work they do requires a lot more time outside of school, a lot more community engagement, and I think they should be compensated for it. There are certain subjects that are, quite frankly, easier to teach than others, and the subject area causes that to be just the way it is. So, my argument is, do you pay a math and science teacher more money? Well, yes, you absolutely should. You should pay a special ed teacher more money, and you should pay a foreign language teacher. If we're making an argument that national data is showing us we can't get people in these fields, how do you attract somebody to the field? You pay them more money. How has the United States tried to attract people to this field? Well, basically, they've offered things like tuition remission. We'll pay $5,000 of your student loans off if you go to school to be a math teacher or science teacher versus being an English teacher. How about being a special ed teacher? Well, same thing. They're going to offer to pay more of your loans off over a period of time. Foreign language teachers, it depends on the area and it depends on the needs. Coming from the Northeast, we were desperate at the district that I worked at, and I worked at a top-scale district that had no issues finding teachers. We could not find Latin teachers. We struggled to find people that could teach Latin, but we had a lot of people that wanted to do it. My argument is we do need to pay based on subject areas and based on credentials. Say that in a unionized state, you're going to get a lot of argument and pushback. But my argument is people get so upset about that in education, but they don't in business. And this goes back to one of the things that I've spoke about multiple times in classes. It's this notion that teachers are the most narcissistic human beings you will ever meet in your life. You will never meet a teacher that says once, I am a bad teacher. It's not going to happen. Every single teacher, and you know this as principals, and if you're going to move into the principalship, you have to know this going into it. Every single teacher thinks they're the greatest teacher in the world, they think they're changing lives, and even if they're ineffective, they still think they're great. You try making that work on a performance evaluation, and all of you have experienced this before. When you tell a teacher they're not effective, and you blame it on, well, here's what your students say, here's what the parents say, here's what the standardized tests say, teachers are more likely to give you excuses. In business, you do not get those excuses because there is a bottom line. Well, you didn't make the organization money, therefore you weren't effective. Education, you have this teacher is a narcissist idea that you're going to have to get used to as future superintendents. So what happens? Well, here's the end results. People that are in those positions retire. The other thing that I've seen happen more frequently is somebody that's a special education teacher stops for a second and they have this aha moment. And I know a lot of them that think this way. They'll say, I'm making a lot of money, I could be making more money being a principal, and I'm basically doing the job that principals are doing. Why don't I get paid more money? So they raise their hand and say, I'm going to be a principal. Who's qualified to be a principal? Well, the special ed teacher is the one that's qualified to be a principal. So they're going to leave, and student enrollment is going to increase, and you're not going to find replacements. Negative organizational conditions lead to staffing problems, which decreases in school performance, and everything is basically a vicious cycle that happens. You know, I want you to see that this study uses data from 1991 and 1992 because it's longitudinal. They wanted to look at what the movers and leavers from the organization were. I would argue that the personalities of people in the 90s are much different than they are in the mid 2010 decade right now, where we're all more likely to jump multiple times over the course of our career. I'm 15 plus years in, and I have been at five different organizations, and I'm midway through my career at this point. You look at some people that have stayed at the same district, same organization, same position for 30 years. We're not going to see that generationally as much as we used to. So other results that you need to know. Public school turnover was lower than Catholic, private, and small school turnover. Why is small school turnover high? Because they can make more money elsewhere. Why is Catholic and private school turnover high? Because they can jump and they can get into a public school where they can make more money. Special education teachers suffer the most from burnout. There is a direct correlation with burnout and being a special education teacher. I can give you 100 research studies that prove that. And younger teachers are going to look elsewhere as well, versus somebody who's dedicated a career to this profession. So why else are people going to leave? Well, they leave because they don't have the support from administrators that they're supposed to have. We've already argued that the role of the school principal has changed. School principals have so much on their plates now, they have so much that they're responsible for, so how can they be there to support 40 or 50 teachers on a daily basis? Mind you, where teachers, every single one of them believe in their mind, they're the best thing that's ever happened on the planet, and the principal should give them their attention at all times. We've already talked about poor salary. I attribute this to the notion of you get more money based on experience, not results in education. You take that for what you will. Discipline problems, I would say that's organizationally specific. Lack of influence, once again, organizationally specific. A district that actually employs professional learning communities where the teachers do have input in maybe the site-based management system, there's going to be more influence versus ones that are more just mechanical in their nature. And lack of student motivation, also organizationally specific as well. So what are the major takeaway messages from this? This is what I would think about if I'm reflecting on this article. Question number one, should schools operate differently as an organization? How are you going to get people to stay? Well, maybe you pay them more money. Should schools pay more money to teachers in high-need areas? Well, yeah, I think so. And should more time be invested to give teachers autonomy? Well, it depends on when and it depends on how. So thank you for looking at this article. And I hope this gives you some insight on some of the work that Ingersoll did and also some of the works of large data sets. Thank you.